The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of this weekend's BYU football and the new look Big 12 Conference. First and 12 is sponsored by Macy's Grocery Store. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday to all of you, Big 12 fans out there. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry, coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas. Cowtown, the Stockyards. Yeah, still down here in Texas, getting ready to recap all the action from Big 12 football this past weekend, Week 7. Alex, man, that was a beatdown for BYU to TCU. We'll get to all of it, but, man, that was a tough loss.
It was a tough one, and it was what's funny about a loss like that, too, is you would think, oh, man, there's just not a lot to say about that. There's actually surprisingly so many numbers that I kind of can't wait to get into where you just be like, you'll be shocked by how much craziness that went on in that game that went against BYU in terms of being able to win a football game. And it almost felt a little bit like they got caught up to, based off of how they had been sort of playing weeks before, Mitch. But, it was a tough one. We'll get into that. We've got all sorts of things to jump into. But why don't we just get going with everything? Since this is a Big 12-centered show, let's get to our Big 12 headlines.
12 headlines.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
The dozen storylines that shaped this week of Big 12 football. Headline 1.
We'll start here in Fort Worth as BYU falls to TCU, 44-11. Alex, I don't even think the score was as close as that would indicate. I think TCU could have put up a 60-piece on BYU. It was a tough day for BYU.
Yeah, interesting, there were a lot of TCU mistakes now that you bring it up. There were a lot of things that they sort of just set themselves back, but no problem. They had the game literally won points-wise in the first 2.5 minutes of play. And I think that as soon as that pick six was thrown by Keaton Slovis, that thing had already sort of written itself. It was like nobody could recover from that. Interestingly enough, considering that BYU had been behind so many other times, they had come back earlier in the season. But there you go. BYU gets absolutely blasted. Headline 2 is from that very game. Josh Hoover gets his first start. We did not respect the process, Mitch. These kids, they go through the process. Somebody finally gave me a shot, he said after the game. It was Sonny Dykes, and Josh Hoover throws for 400 yards in his first career start. He just needed a chance. That's all he needed. That's all that everybody ever needs, right? I mean, the guy goes in there, throws the ball almost 60 times, 437 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns, the 2 picks that absolutely did not matter at all. It was an absolute career day for anybody, but certainly a guy who's brand new at TCU and Josh Hoover. Crazy day for him. That's how they got the win, was on his back.
Hoover was outstanding. We'll get to more of that BYU-TCU game a little bit later this hour. Headline number 3. We talked about this last week, Alex. Kansas State, they make a switch at quarterback. Avery Johnson, he rushes for 5 touchdowns. That's the most by a Big 12 player since 2011. The last guy to do that from the quarterback position was Colin Klein, his OC. He leads Kansas State to a win on the road over Texas Tech, 38-21.
Yeah, they needed it too. I mean, considering what they had just come off of loss-wise, and they were at Texas Tech. That was a tough win for K-State. No reason to believe that they're going to be just totally heading in a downward spiral. So there you go. They get the win. Number 4, Texas Tech's quarterback Baron Morton gets hurt, and their freshman Jake Strong comes in, doesn't get enough done. I think he's got a lot of promise, but my goodness, Texas Tech at home getting beat by a couple of touchdowns by Kansas State, and it's not good to see your quarterback go down ever.
Headline number 5, what a way to start the Big 12 week of action this week was Houston. They completed a Hail Mary on Thursday night to defeat West Virginia in the Dana Holgorsen Bowl.
The Dana Holgorsen Bowl. I mean, hey, anytime you're supposed to chalk something up for a win or a loss as to how it's supposed to, quote unquote, go in the Big 12, here comes Houston and goes, hey, this is where the AAC, Mitch, playing their guys on Thursday and Friday nights. They go, oh, we're used to this, man. They do it. West Virginia's like, I don't even know what hit us, man. That Hail Mary was ridiculous, and it was just a fun way to end that game. Congrats to Houston. They get a win over West Virginia. They get their first conference win.
Headline number 6, West Virginia. They almost had it done. They had 12 seconds left. They scored a touchdown on a 4th down play and thought, oh, West Virginia's going to go to 5-1. They're going to remain undefeated in Big 12 play. but they couldn't finish the job.
Yeah, no reason to think not, too, when you go into a situation like that. Just one of those crazy plays. It's a low percentage, but it converts sometimes. Oklahoma State, headline number 7 here. Ollie Gordon putting up 284 yards of total offense, 168 on the ground, 116 through the air. And Kansas, I don't know who they are anymore. We don't know who Oklahoma State is anymore. We'll hear from Mike Gundy a little bit later in the show, but 39-32, they get the win over Kansas.
Yeah, that was a nice win. Oklahoma State bouncing back because we had them at the bottom of this league. And
just keep them there, Mitch. Just in case. Just in case, because these teams keep changing so much. You'd be like, look, they'll be back there next week. Just keep them there. We're running out of dry erase markers at the station here, man. We can't keep moving these teams around the board like this, dude.
This week, I'm telling you, folks, stay tuned to hour number 2, the power rankings. It was a mess,
it's ridiculous.
But we're going to put it together still. Headline number 8, Iowa State's Rocco Beck, quarterback, throws 3 touchdowns as they roll through Cincinnati. Beck's turning it up. They're starting to find an identity after all the losses they had early in the season with the gambling scandal. Iowa State settling in at 3-1.
How are we suddenly getting Iowa State more consistent than anybody else in the conference? I have actually no idea why. Headline number 9, Cincinnati still has not won a game in Big 12 play. 4-game losing streak for the Bearcats. Not looking good for them, but hey, it's conference play. Everybody's trying to deal with it. Let's go.
Headline number 10. If America doesn't love the Big 12, this stat should tell them why they should start to love Big 12 football. 4 of the 5 winners in the Big 12 this week were underdogs. The lone underdog that didn't get it done was BYU.
And they've been underdogs all year, it seemed like, especially in conference play. This one was about as embarrassing as you could get when it comes to that. Headline 11, the top 3 teams right now in the Big 12. You ready for this, Mitch? Okay, Oklahoma, 3-0, fine. Iowa State, the Cyclones roll up and go, or they're 3-1 right now, just as we had it. And then there's 4 teams at 2-1. It's I don't even know what to say about this conference right now. They'll probably have a couple guys in the college football playoff at the end of this whole thing, right, Mitch? Come on.
I think Oklahoma's got to probably win out if they want to get to the playoff.
I mean,
because
please.
If they lose one game, it's probably going to be to a 3 or 4 loss team.
Somebody's got to do it. And finally, headline number 12. Those newcomers, as we just mentioned, are 2-10. Conference play is real. They told everybody. They told us. But first 12 league games for those newcomers, they're 2-10, including BYU, who's 1-2 in all of that. So only 1 win against the original 10 members as well. So those are your first 12 headlines from an absolute mess of a Saturday. I mean, when you look at it, this is why we love college football. This is why we dip in so much to this sport that we love, Mitch, is that the Big 12 is an absolute, it is the perfect example of any given Saturday, these teams will roll up, or a Thursday or a Friday, as we saw. These teams will roll up, and they're just eating their own right now. And I kind of love it. I kind of hate it. Hated it for BYU today, but I do like that in any game that goes forward right now, Vegas is getting so nervous. They just don't even know how to call these games at this point. I love it.
And it's so volatile at the quarterback spot, too. I mean, the names that we were talking about in those headlines, Avery Johnson, Jake Strong at Texas Tech, Rocco Beck. I mean, these were names that none of us were discussing preseason, and now they're going to be, seems like, the key guys in the near future for these teams. It's just a wild league right now. And, yeah, Oklahoma and Texas were on byes this weekend, but this league, again, it's just expect the unexpected because crazy things are going to happen every single week.
Speaking of the unexpected, you're going to get the Offensive Player of the Week. No doubt your Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week is going to be Josh Hoover, speaking of surprises. Let's get into that, though, when we come back. How this TCU 44, BYU 11 game really played out. Like I said, I've got some insane numbers, Mitch, that I'm going to roll past you. We're going to hear some sound as well from Kalani Sitake and his explanation. I mean, they worked their tails off to get ready for that game, and so it's even more depressing when you see that they end up losing to the fashion that they did because they were not expecting anything like this. Let's take that first break. We'll come back. It is 1st and 12, heard right here on KSL News Radio and on the KSL Sports Zone every Sunday. You can tune in 10 to noon and on KSL again this afternoon from 3 to 5, plus the podcast. My heavens. Download the podcast. Find it wherever you can. Catch up on all the Big 12 headlines across the league. More to go around the corner. It's right here. It's 1st and 12.
Read all the stories about BYU sports no one else has heard. Go to KSLSports.com for exclusive columns by BYU insider Mitch Harper. That's KSLSports.com.
right. You can hear Mitch Harper on KSL News Radio for Cougar Sports Saturday. Cougar Nation tomorrow. He and Matt Baiamonte are going to be fielding calls. We fielded calls in our post game yesterday after the BYU and TCU game had ended, and I thought, oh, no one's going to call in on this one. Au contraire, Mitch. There's a lot of folks who are going to want to call, and you're going to hear a lot of things, a lot of opinions on who should go, who should stay, who should be benched. I always love the quick trigger on the grumpy fan in that moment. But so Cougar Nation tomorrow night on KSL News Radio. It's going to be an amazing one. You don't want to miss it. Our show is 1st and 12. That's what you're listening to right now on the KSL Sports Zone and on KSL News Radio every Sunday and on podcast. Go download it wherever you find podcasts. All brought to you by Macy's Grocery Store. Happy shopping. Let's get the breakdown going here, Mitch. 44-11, that was the big one. And the storyline, of course, was really the ineptitude of BYU, but it was also Josh Hoover's coming out party, a backup that we all looked at and went, well, there you go. BYU's going to be able to steal this one from the Horned Frogs, and instead in comes Josh Hoover, who throws the ball almost 60 times. Amani Bailey, who we're expecting to get 150, 180 yards on the ground, 63 yards on the ground because all they did was go, hey, Hoover, slinging it, man, and he did it. 437 yards through the air for Hoover. It was an absolute masterclass by a guy who we'd never seen do anything, Mitch.
He was outstanding, and let me just say this, too. Kendall Briles, he probably wants to call every game against BYU because this guy just torches BYU. Last year when he was the OC at Arkansas, 644 yards.
Oh, of course.
This year with TCU, 584 yards against two different DCs. That tempo of TCU was just outstanding. And that's the thing, too. Different than the Arkansas game where the Arkansas, early had one or two plays that swung it to a 14-0 lead. This was a pick six, but then also 7-play drive that they just moved down the field with ease on BYU and set the tone that they were far and away the better team. They had more speed. BYU looked like they were stuck in mud. And to your point about, fans calling in and saying who's in, who needs to be benched, who needs to be fired, I think this is one of those games that recalibrates everything. All the expectations, all the good fortune that was built in September, I feel like that was lost on Saturday because
100%.
Keaton Slovis now, I feel like I'm not putting all the blame on him, but I'll tell you, next week if he has another poor performance, maybe a bad first half, you got to start getting ready for Jake Retzlaff because that was an abysmal performance from that BYU offense. And Aaron Roderick needs a shoulder blame, but Keaton Slovis does as well. It just was not a good day at all, and that pick six was the worst possible thing that could happen, and it just set the tone and snowballed from there.
It was crazy because he kind of stepped into the throw, right? Like it was a 3rd and 5, the very first play from scrimmage, Mitch. I'm watching because, I've got a lot of time invested into Connor Pay, right, who gets moved over to center, and he comes on our show every week, and I'm like, I'm rooting for this guy because he's awesome to interview. He's a great dude. And they want to get this thing going. And center is his position, right? I mean, that's where he's used to playing. He knows how to run block. That's his strength. And the very first play from scrimmage, 7 yards out of L.J. Martin, right up the gut, right? And so you go, hey, let's get this thing going. Then they lose a yard on the next play, and then the 3rd and 5 is where you're gifted a pick six that was thrown straight to a defender. And I looked at it, and I went back, and I'm going, where on earth was that read coming from? I know there was a late blitz that kind of came straight up the middle that he started to step forward and then immediately kind of a little bit of a short arm throw, and that's what ended up getting it right to the TCU defender and the pick six, and then they never got it back. They never got it back, Mitch. There was, and I say they, I mean he never got anything back. There was never any swagger, there was never any confidence, and all the things that you had seen him build right from the time that everyone looked and went, what's going on during that same Houston game? Keaton Slovis went back to basics of looking like he was that Pitt quarterback from last year who was so inept in a lot of games and looked like he was out of sorts. And it was weird because they prepped so much for this game. I know Kalani, who we're going to hear from, made mention of that they had prepared so much for this game. But I want to throw some numbers out there, Mitch, because I wanted to bring some things up that were like a shock to me. I like looking into some of the crazy numbers. One of the biggest ones is the third down conversions by TCU were just crazy. I mean, at one point they were 12 for 14 on third downs. And you remember it seemed like every time it was third and long, slant pass, right? And they would just
yeah.
convert every one of those things. And it was like there was no way of defending it. And they ended up like 12 or 13 for 19. That wasn't the one that stood out to me. It was what happened on first downs, okay? BYU on first down gained 68 yards through the day total. On all the first downs, they had 25 first downs that they attempted, right? Where it's 1st and 10, and they make that 68 yards. Any guesses on TCU's first down conversion, or not first down conversion, first down yardage that they gained throughout the day? Now, they had 580, right?
I'd say probably 8 or 9.
No, but what was the yardage that they had gained total?
Oh, a total?
BYU's total was 68, okay? So what was their total just on first down?
I'll go 280.
Okay, 300.
Wow.
Okay, you overshot it with 280, right?
Yeah.
300 yards just on first down.
Wow.
They gained 7.8 yards on average on first down. Okay, 300 yards on just one down through the game is an insanely embarrassing number. Like we do, that's not a number we even ever talk about, but it is such a glaringly ridiculous number, Mitch. And I'm fired up about it because it's so embarrassing. Like, to give up that many yards, you're never going to get that back. You're never going to have a time of possession battle. You're never going to have any kind of, like, that means you didn't stop anything. If you can't stop it on first down, you didn't stop anything. And they didn't. And the only times that they did were self-inflicted penalties or the 2 turnovers that they had, which they immediately got right back. You know, it's like Eddie Hecker gets a pick. Who cares? Strip sack in the next 2 plays, right? So, it was just there were a lot of embarrassing things, but 584, almost 600 yards of offense, those are the types of numbers. It happens to be Kendall Briles from last year, right, from the Arkansas game where everybody goes, I don't know if I like this coaching staff, right? That's what got to go. That's what got to go in. And certainly there's a lot that you're going to look at. I'm not the guy that goes change the coaching staff, but I am one of those guys that goes, hey, exactly what you said. You nailed it. This reset everything. Like, it's coming out of a timeout. The bye week is like coming out of it, and having a performance like this is coming out of a TV media timeout and having 2 false starts in a row. Like, it is absolutely embarrassing, and it's not a good way to get things going. I know 4-2 sounds okay, but it feels worse right now.
It does. And here's another stat for you, too, Alex, to highlight the issues for BYU. Stop rate. Those are when defense is in drives with a opposing punt, interception, a forced fumble. BYU only had 16% stop rate. TCU 73%. They just suffocated BYU. There was a brief moment when BYU got it down to 24-8. They had that 4th down conversion with Chase Robertson. You thought for a moment maybe BYU could make this interesting. But then TCU, to their credit, moved down the field next drive, and they put their foot on the gas and scored. That, to me, was one of the more impressive possessions from Hoover and this TCU attack. They just moved at will on BYU. And I think, you know, with the coaching staff, that was an inexcusable performance for Kalani's team to come out of a bye when you're well rested. And TCU was the team that was reeling. They were the ones that had their backs against the wall. They lacked any sort of identity. Their head coach saying they're not playing winning football. BYU is. And that's how you come out and play. That's just inexcusable. And you brought up Connor Pay. I am glad that they switched Connor Pay back to center because you're right, Alex. That is where his future, if he's going to make money in the NFL, it's going to be at center. But why is it happening now? In the springtime, he takes every snap at center while Paul Miley's out with an injury. And you would think at that moment, okay, he's had all that continuity with Keaton Slovis at the center position. Why not keep playing him in the fall? These issues happened out of the gate in week 1 against Sam Houston. Why suddenly did they make the change after a bye week? Look, I admire the thought to change things up, but it's like, why didn't you make these changes sooner? Because now you're at the midway point, and it feels like you got to make some changes again. Darryl Funk, the offensive line coach, his seat's got to be turning up a little bit. It has to, because once you make this sort of change and it still doesn't work, man, what else do you turn to? I know Kalani doesn't make changes on the staff in season. He never will. Mm-hmm. But that position, they've got talent, and they're underperforming at such a high level. Like, it's just got to get better, Alex. And that is where it all starts for BYU, is at the offensive line. That is the core of the problems, and they are underachieving.
It was a mess most of the day. It felt like they were not just playing from behind, but it felt like it was really just an uphill battle they were never going to win. And, you know, there were little things too. Was it Crew Wakely who had the who had the most ridiculous
unsportsmanlike. Yes.
Like what a killer.
Can't
right?
do that, man.
What
Can't
a killer, because you just barely got one, and I get trying to get your guys going or whatever, but I mean, it's 24-8, and you're right. They scored with 40 seconds left in the first half. Like scoring. Okay, I'm going to bring something up here before we get out. I know we're going to take a break here before we get to Kalani's comments in the next segment, but I couldn't help but draw the comparison to the Oregon game last year, in the sense that they go in, because I think at the end of the third quarter last year it was 38-7. I went back and looked at the end of the third quarter in Oregon, because it was a game that was from the beginning they were outplayed, right? It just was. They walked into that place and it was like, hey, there's some hope here. And I'll tell you what, you remember this? I mean,
Yes.
You were there in Eugene. It was one of those games that not for 1 second did you feel like BYU had something going. And again, same thing at the half. They score right before the half. It makes it it was just an unachievable goal. Like, you just knew that they did not have any ability to be able to come back from the numbers that they had when it was 31-8. We're looking around at the studio. We're going, I don't know how to talk about this. And the unfortunate thing is, in a game like that, you talk about how ridiculous and how bad the numbers were. All right, we'll take our break. We'll come back. We'll listen to some Kalani Sitake quotes and some of his podium talk and some of the questions that they fielded, including some that Mitch threw out there. But we've got it all right here. Now we got mad, Mitch. What's going on here? We're supposed to have. I know it was a bad game yesterday, but we're supposed to forget about it. Let's have some fun on a Sunday, can't we? Or is it not possible?
We can have some
after a
fun.
game like that?
That Big 12 power ranking is just around the corner. That's a lot of fun.
Okay, that will be fun. All right, we'll come back. More to go. It's all brought to you by Macy's. Happy shopping. They bring you First and 12 every week right here. So appreciate their sponsorship. We'll come right back. More to go around the corner. Stay with us.
The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of this weekend's BYU football and the new look Big 12 Conference. First and 12 is sponsored by Macy's Grocery Store. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
We're fired up on this Sunday afternoon. How could you not after that weekend that was for BYU? The Cougars fall to TCU 44-11. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry. I'm coming to you from Fort Worth, and yesterday I was on location at M&G Carter Stadium, and in the bowels of the stadium, lobbying and tossing some questions to Kalani Sitake after that difficult loss to the Horned Frogs. And one of the first questions that was tossed to Kalani Sitake's way was about Josh Hoover, who just lit up BYU's defense.
Yeah, I thought that looking at what he did what Hoover did last week, those are probably plays that were built more for Morris. And then this week, I think they just utilized his talents. I mean, he's a really effective thrower, and he was smart with the ball in his hands. He didn't make a lot of mistakes, and I thought he took necessary risks, and they just seemed to have a really good rhythm going, and it was like chunk yardage, big plays, and they just did a lot of different things. So credit to them. I mean, they have. I don't want to just be about the quarterback, but their whole team played physical. They're really good. It was a good, sound game plan from all three phases from them, and hats off to the coaches and their players. And having a young quarterback come in and fill in. I'm sure he got most of the bulk of the reps this week, but didn't get them last week. But it shows that put some time and effort into these young men, they can do it. And Sonny's a great coach, so he's going to get that done. And I'll be cheering for them the rest of the time. But it was a tough game, tough pill for us to swallow. But we have no choice but to learn from this and get better. But yeah, I thought they didn't do things completely different. They didn't change the whole playbook, but I thought they highlighted some of his strengths for sure. Yeah, I don't have all the answers to that, Mitch. I think that I just need to do a better job getting them to respond better. I know that having a turnover, pick six, going down early and giving up the score on the opening drive for them, being down 14-0, we weren't in a position to really fight back from that. We didn't make enough plays and enough stops to get that going. And so even when we were having some success and be able to get some stops, third downs, they punished us. And they did that by making third downs a little bit more manageable. They didn't have a lot of third and longs. They're always around the third and medium to short. So the sense of urgency from the team, I knew do a better job. I thought we had a great practice. We had great week of prep and just not expecting this result from us.
How much do you think that TCU's speed affecting the game and Bruce Cosmo?
Yeah, they had some speed, but I didn't think there was anything that really hurt us downfield. It was just the stuff that was intermediate plays, and they could turn. They have athletes. I mean, these receivers have been around. They got tons of experience, so they could take a short throw and turn it into a big play. And it's more like just a chunk yardage, getting 8 to 10 yards a piece. It wasn't really them opening up the game plan by throwing downfield quite often. It was more about the stuff that we couldn't stop underneath, and that requires a quarterback with a lot of accuracy. So this guy, he threaded the needle quite a bit on us, and man, I was really impressed with him. So we didn't make things even difficult for him. We didn't pressure him. We didn't get to him and make things uncomfortable. But it just goes to show that guy has time. He can really hurt you, and yeah, hats off to him. I mean, he's a. I thought he made some throws that I was not expecting, but they put him in a position where he could feel comfortable and have success, and he delivered.
How does the offensive line? You're told the offensive line still there were struggles on the ground.
Yeah. I don't know if we're like this type of team that can just sit there, line up, and play power run game, But I don't think it's the lineup change at all. I think it's a combination of things, and I said this before. You guys heard me say it last couple of weeks. We just want to get points on the board, and so whatever we're doing isn't working as well because we didn't get enough points, and I'd like to see more points on the board. So whatever it takes, it doesn't really matter. I'm not holding us to anything. I'm not trying to handcuff us to anything. I just get points on the board, get big plays, get chunk yardage, and get first downs, and we can do that. Then I'll be happy.
How disappointed were you though with how flat the offense was?
Yeah, I was obviously. I mean, when you score 11 points, that's not going to make anybody happy, But the disappointment isn't just on the offense; it's on all three phases. I thought, and then the thing is, but you don't want to get so down that all you do is just complain about what we didn't do. I think we didn't shoot ourselves in the foot as much as people want to say. I think we have to be accountable for what we've done, but I think you have to give credit to TCU making plays. And we didn't help ourselves in some ways, but in my mind, this shouldn't have been such a big discrepancy in the scoreboard. And so we needed help from all three phases, didn't get it. And when you go 0 for 3, you're going to lose 44-11. That's going to happen. But we'll respond from this. We'll get better. We have no choice, and I'd like to see our team make the steps forward and get that identity that I thought TCU did all in this one game. I thought this is going to be a different type of TCU team. You're going to see play from here on out. You can kind of sense that we need to make that same type of improvement from now until we take the field next week.
Yeah, so there's Kalani Sitake. Mitch, one of the things that stood out there is that, I mean, they're shocked. They were shocked, right? And that's never a good look for a coaching staff to go. We went in, and these guys have been prepping for almost 15 days for TCU, exclusively because of the bye week, and they got back to basics, all the stuff that we'd heard of last week, and then Kalani and his guys reeling now. And that's no rest for the wicked when you're in that conference. That's kind of the good news too. Go right to prep for Texas Tech next week.
I think one thing that stood out from the commentary from Kalani and also the players too, Keaton Slovis and AJ Vongphachon, I think they misread their hand when it came to Hoover. I think they thought that he was going to keep running the ball like Chandler Morris did quite often.
Yep.
I think this defense misread things, and they thought the run was going to be consistently turned to, and it just never happened. And Hoover just kept slinging the ball, and I think that caught them off guard. And that's kind of surprising a little bit with the Jay Hill defense, because I think one of the traits of Jay Hill is that he's always going to be so dialed in. And look, Jay Hill has turned this thing around in so many ways, and he deserves some leniency. He inherited one of the 5 worst defenses in college football last year, and he's turned it around pretty well. Like they're a good group, but they got exposed a bit. I think they misread their hand, and that showed going up against a backup quarterback in Hoover who set the world on fire and now joins the world of Jeff Ballard and Cody Vaz and Brett Ratliff as the backup quarterbacks that just torch BYU.
Oh, my goodness. I thought – and listen, there's enough – like you said, what was – Ballard was – he was a practice squad guy, right? Wasn't that the deal? It was like –
yes.
And then he stepped
BYU
in for Ty
Gunn.
He comes in and go. What, that was a 52-50 game, wasn't it, or 51?
Yeah, 51-50 in OT.
51-50. Oh my gosh! Think about all the times. It's a rivalry, except for when BYU's lost the last 5 in a row against TCU. Now, all right, we'll take the break. We'll come back. When we do, we've got a lot to jump into. Of course, it's that time of the week where we get into our featured game, and it was that Thursday night game. I know you wouldn't have thought to yourself that this was going to be a featured game, but because of how this thing ended, and also because it's another team who just got a crazy win over a team that they were not supposed to beat. We're going to talk about it next. Houston and West Virginia. It's our Big 12 featured game of the week. Stay with us.
Can't get enough BYU football? Listen to Cougar Nation. Mitch Harper takes your calls Monday nights from 6 to 7 on KSL News Radio. Podcast at kslnewsradio.com.
All right, welcome back. It is 1st and 12. Alex Kirry here. You can hear me every day on Unrivaled, 3 to 6 on the KSL Sports Zone. And then, of course, Mitch Harper, as you just heard the voice say, Cougar Nation is going to be an interesting one tomorrow for you guys. Which, look, don't shy away from it. You got to be the guy who hosts the the hurt feelings of some of those fans, man.
Sure.
This has got to be one of those talk therapy sessions. All right, get that cognitive therapy going. Be like, hey, who hurt you? Which offensive coordinator hurt you in your past to where you feel like this? I'll go full on. You got to be Dr. Ruth on this thing, minus all the innuendo.
I agree. All those people that had the hot takes on X, they got to bring it on the phone line. I'm here for you. We're here for you.
See, but you know what's funny is when they actually get in person, when they actually even get in the voice or get their voice over the phone, then they go, and look, I like the guy, but on X, they're going, get me Jake Retzlaff, get me the head of Aaron Roderick on a platter. Like that, you start to get that kind of stuff on Twitter. And then when you ask them about it, they go, I actually like him a lot. And you're like, okay, which one is it? All right, so our Big 12 featured game of the week, it's all brought to you by Macy's Grocery Store, by the way. Every time that Mitch and I get together for 1st and 12 on a Sunday, Macy's Grocery Store, freshest fruits and vegetables, local farms, and your favorite local brands. Macy's Happy Shopping. This game was picked because, there's a couple of reasons. Like, you might say, well, that's a dog. Houston and West Virginia, going into the season, Mitch, we would have looked at that one and said, that will never be featured on 1st and 12 for our featured game of the week. And it wasn't just the Hail Mary either that ended that thing, that gave Houston its first conference win, I would like to say. I think that it's also the fact that it's a little bit of a microcosm of what the Big 12 is right now. You got people coming in. You have unexpected heroes in these games. You have crazy outcomes that we have never planned for. I don't know what to think about that game in particular. Houston and West Virginia was supposed to be, and I know they were playing it in Houston, and I know Houston's looking for that first conference win. But and I know whatever you want to say about Dana Holgorsen and whether or not, oh no, he's trying to get that win because he's over here trying to reestablish himself. That's the old team he used to play for. Let's get it going. And that's not the case. This is not something that you want to actually see somebody go in and have a night like this and you go, look, Dana Holgorsen, great. That's a great storyline. Neil Brown, awesome storyline that you've seen out of him all year. But I just really like that West Virginia has been doing so well and that Houston goes, not coming at you.
It was a great win for Houston, and I think you're right about how this represents the Big 12, the new Big 12, because it was noteworthy to me, Alex, when we had West Virginia at number 4 in our power rankings last week, and we had Houston dead last, 14th, and the prognosticators had West Virginia as only a 2-point favorite, and you're thinking, I was like, oh, that seems a little bit tight. I know Houston's at home, but I just think that's what this league is going to be about. And it did represent these wild, wacky, made-for-TV, college football junkie sort of game that has this crazy finish and gets, X and Twitter and social media buzzing a little bit. It's just kind of what it's going to be, I think, in the future. And, yeah, no one was watching, New Year's Six teams or playoff teams, but it was just a fun football game. And I think that's what this league is going to be built on. And I got to say, too, the quarterback battle in this one was pretty good. Garrett Green, he is small for West Virginia, but that dude is tough, and I love watching him play. He had 47 yards rushing, 391 through the air, but the guy that won the night, Donovan Smith, he completed his last 16 attempts. Of course, that last one being the Hail Mary, which was tip drill. So much fun. And I think, too, Alex, this win was critical for Houston because had Houston lost, I think the hot seat always feels like it's kind of there for Holgorsen, but, man, that would have been tough to escape had he lost this one, and because they had a lead, and then West Virginia stormed back, and it just this epic swing of emotions, and so that was a much needed win for Houston.
So then you think, okay, what happens next week with these two teams, right? Because the pattern has been so far, you think you know something about a team. Houston's starting to figure it out, right? West Virginia's back to being garbage, and maybe that does happen next week. That's what's crazy about this is, I don't know. It might actually turn into that. Like, I don't know why that somebody thinks that this would be like. This doesn't really indicate anything in this Big 12 because West Virginia has been playing actually really good football, and then Houston has not been playing very well. But guess what they did? They game planned and they got ready for that game. I look at this and you should probably, if you're a BYU fan, go, look, if Houston can beat West Virginia on any given night, because what you don't want is to look at the Cincinnati win and then see their 4 losses in a row and go, well, that's the only reason you won that game is because Cincinnati's garbage, and there's a little bit of that. And then I know that there are BYU fans who watched Arkansas go to 2-5 on the season now or whatever it is, or get their 4th or 5th loss in a row. And they played Alabama a little bit tight, and there was a friend of mine reached out and goes, "Hey, we beat Arkansas more than what Alabama did. I think that's probably a good sign for us." I go, "Settle your horses. It's 44-11 currently in this BYU game." So it's just funny how fans work, but I couldn't tell you how this league is going to shake out, Mitch. I mean, I look across college football and I go, you know what? Those freaking SEC guys, they have something when it comes to going, look, give us some bad teams at the bottom that we know we can get, certain games out of. Give us just a very regular run-of-the-mill middle course, and then give us the very, very top-heavy teams. And we like that economy because otherwise you get stuff like the Big 12 right now, which is just an insane mess, and I kind of love it.
I do too, but I will say this. I'm buying in on West Virginia. I look at the rest of their schedule, Alex. The next 6 games, they're at the midway point. They're 4-2. I think they get to 8 wins because they've got 2 of the newcomers still remaining in BYU, or actually 3 of the newcomers, UCF, BYU, and Cincinnati. Their toughest games at Oklahoma. They go at Baylor. They got at UCF, Oklahoma State next week. I think they get to 8. They'll probably be favored in 5 of their next 6 games. I like what West Virginia is. And to lose on a fluke play, not fluke, but the Hail Mary, last-second play, that's not going to happen very often. I'm buying in. I think they're going to get to a bowl game, and Neil Brown's going to cool off the hot seat, and he's going to probably keep his job for at least another year.
So here's what we got. This was your game of the week. And, again, like I said, I almost, when you put it up there earlier, and I go, hey, look, we're going to have better games coming in here with these other ones. We know we're going to be able to put a better game up there, but I think that this was one of those games this week that you look at and you go, this is a little something different that the Big 12 gave you this week. There were a lot of pretty good games across the board in the conference. There were upsets or teams who, beat the spread, teams who were the underdogs, all that stuff. But I think that you can look at this game and you can say, look, that's a great win for Houston, and it was a moment where, crazily enough, West Virginia was a massive favorite in that game, and then here we are, and of course we saw something very different. All right, we'll take another break here. When we come back, it's the second hour of First and 12, Mitch. You know what that means? We got our power rankings. We have all sorts of stuff. We have our whip around across the entire Western Conference or the Western part of the United States. Our full on look at the teams that are coming back into the conference, as well as all the teams, of course, and how they performed across this thing. Plus our power rankings you don't want to miss. Stay right here. It's First and 12 right here, KSL News Radio and 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.